So here's something that's been pretty much unescapable over the last couple of weeks. The crypto market, the cryptocurrency market is absolutely cratering. And so as the market is cratering, of course, a lot of people who, might be, frequently critical of that market have been talking about it quite a lot. And there's actually a YouTube channel that reached my attention here at some point here over the past week or so. And I got pulled right into a deep dive into some of these cryptocurrencies and these NFTs. And I gotta tell you, it is a jungle out there. Oh, baby, it's a wild world. So my journey into kind of learning a little bit more about these things than I knew before, it actually started with a post that I saw about crypto.com. Or as I call it, chud.com. Let's face it, there's a certain segment of people that cryptocurrencies have really appealed to, and it might be an unfair characterization, but I think it's funny as hell. But anyway, so crypto.com, if you've seen the ads, they're the ones with Matt Damon, where he's basically telling you, oh, look at all these enterprising explorers from the past. And look at all of these people over here, that failed and they choked in their big historical moment. And you don't want to be the one that chokes at this moment with cryptocurrencies. Go buy a whole bunch of cryptocurrencies, spend a lot of money on crypto.com. And as it turns out, that is kind of a terrible idea. As I found this YouTube channel, it's called CoffeeZilla. And basically, they took they took a look at some of these cryptocurrencies, and they are definitely they're definitely not playing fair, and they're definitely not playing honestly with a lot of the people that they're dealing with. And so, in particular, Crypto.com, they have their own cryptocurrency. I mean, they'll sell you a whole bunch of other cryptocurrencies, but they have their own particular cryptocurrency. And they were trying to get people to stake money into these cryptocurrencies. And so apparently what staking means is that when you're staking into a cryptocurrency, you're taking a large sum of money, you're investing it into that crypto, and you are basically promising that you're not going to pull that money out. And basically that I presume they have mechanisms in place that will either prevent you from taking your money back or will penalize you if you take your money back. But they had all kinds of different tiers that you could actually buy into. And so the largest tier was something that they called Obsidian. And in order to get, the Obsidian debit card that they would give you, you had to stake $400,000 into their cryptocurrency. And if you did that, you actually would get some very cool benefits. And I have to admit that this even sounds cool to me. They would sit there and they would say that, they would pay for they would pay for all of your online subscriptions. So your Netflix, your Amazon Prime, your Spotify, all of that stuff, whatever else there might be, anything else that was allegedly participating, they would pay for it. And then on top of that, they would give you 8% cash back on all of your purchases with this Obsidian card. Now, damn, that sounds like a pretty good deal. But as it turns out, the deal is basically off. They turned around and said, it's like, oh, that's not sustainable. After a whole bunch of people gave them their money, they turned around and said, oh, that's not sustainable. We can't give you all of your online subscriptions anymore, and we're not going to give you 8% cash back. We're going to give you 3% cash back. Like less than half of what they promised you up front. That's what you get. Let's say a lot of their customers were obviously very unhappy with it. That sounds like, that's basically, in my opinion, that's a scam. And as it turns out, the guy who founded Crypto.com, he left some of his previous employers, some of the previous businesses that he was associated with, he left them basically kind of under a cloud of mistrust. There were things that had happened, that people were not happy about. And so that's kind of the story with that. But that really wasn't where my deep dive into cryptocurrencies and NFTs, non-fungible tokens, so to speak, ended. Because the very next thing that I discovered was shockingly hilarious in so many ways, and it actually intersects with so many different things that I actually do have, quite a bit of interest in, and I've actually at times meant to talk about these things more, but sometimes, I just don't have the time to record something while this particular story is still current. And so this one actually kind of intersected with, basically, you talk about masculinity, right? So there was an adult film performer, a retired adult film performer by the name of Lana Rhoades. And she was launching her own NFT line. And apparently this NFT line was just like, it was like supposed to be like, just like a bunch of cartoons drawn of her, and people were supposed to buy these things. And apparently there was, quite an enthusiastic, little niche market for them. And so all these people went in and bought into it. And then the very next thing that happened was that before these NFTs had ever been minted, she turns around and she pulls out all the money. She turns around, she pulls out all the money, and she says that it's because the people that were paying into the project were too toxic for her and that she didn't like them. It was because of their toxic masculinity. Apparently there were people there that had said mean things to her. And that was what she said was the reason for her pulling out all of the money. And of course, at that time, she doesn't bother to mention that actually she had pulled out all of the money, before any of these things had actually happened. She pointed to one particular incident. Apparently it was an Ask Me Anything on some social media site. She said that people said things to her that were mean, and she didn't want to see these comments anymore, and so she couldn't continue with the project. So she took, I believe the number was $1.5 million out of this project and gave the people that were involved in it nothing. And so you would think that these investors would be pretty pissed off about that. That's what I would think, and I think that if I was one of them, yeah, I would be pretty mad. And some of them were. But then some of them were actually trying to police the other ones and basically saying it's like, we have to be nicer. She's right, we're a bunch of creeps, and we're a bunch of creeps and a bunch of jerks, and if we're nicer to her, maybe she'll come back, and we have to prove that we're not toxic so that this porn star will come back and quote unquote save us. And I was absolutely, that is so sad. Because honestly, I don't know what it was that any of these people ever thought that they were going to get out of this thing. I mean, the whole NFTs thing to me seems really, really sketchy. I don't pretend to fully understand it. I've heard different kind of versions of what it is, and it sounds like the most reliable source that I've heard is basically saying that it's like I had always thought that, an NFT was like a JPEG or something like that had a blockchain within that file so that it couldn't be duplicated. It couldn't be duplicated without somebody else, kind of something in there designating that somebody else had bought this at such a time that they were the owner of it. And it turns out that an NFT is actually quite a bit less than that. It turns out that actually like an NFT sounds like it's almost like a link to a JPEG that exists somewhere and you don't even really have control of it. It's something that people could turn around tomorrow. They could delete that file tomorrow, and you own a link to nothing. You bought into nothing, and you're never going to get your money back. And it turns out that there actually are people out there who have done that. They have minted NFTs, and then sold the NFTs, and then turned around and took the the file that this is allegedly supposed to link to, and they have turned around and they have replaced those files with pictures of rugs. And that's what they call this. They call this a rug pull. And it's apparently it's a much more common scam with these cryptocurrencies and these NFTs than even I realized. But I do kind of feel like people must have seen that. Like, if people did not see this coming, they should have seen this coming, and there's really no excuse to not see this coming. friend of mine who works in financial services, a couple of years ago, he told me that cryptocurrencies, they were actually kind of established as like this anti-corruption measure. But then they actually became incredibly corrupt because one of the first things that happened with cryptocurrencies was that, you know, a lot of nefarious people started to buy them and started to use them to launder money. And so you're talking about organized crime. You know, talked about the mafia in particular. Said that a lot of financial services professionals at that particular time were basically refusing to deal with crypto. Because one way down the line, there was a very good chance that they were being implicated in some kind of a crime. And so, you know, when this entire market has something like that at its core, everybody should just simply expect that you're going to see a lot of scammers, and should be proceeding, you know, with extreme levels of caution. And yet somehow, you know, they don't see it. And then suddenly, you know, they wind up having bought, you know, all of these NFTs from a porn star that they don't actually know. They're never going to meet. They're never going to fuck her. You know, she's not going to suck you. It won't happen. And then when she rug pulls you and takes all of your money, you know, she actually, basically, she preyed on what had to have been these people's single greatest insecurity that they had. You know, it was like their own masculinity. I guess if you're going to be, I guess if you're going to be a predator, if you're going to be a financial predator, you know, I guess, you know, in this day and age, you know, with our society being the way that it is and certain things being the way that they are, yeah, it kind of feels to me like that would be the way to do it. But that actually wasn't even where the rabbit hole ended. It actually goes deeper still. Because as I kind of started to unravel that, I discovered that this porn star was actually running a podcast where she was giving women advice on how to be trophy wives. So basically, she was going out, she was giving other women advice, you know, on how they were going to find rich men to marry. I suppose all of it just kind of wraps up into, that entire little chapter of it kind of wraps up into one neat little bow. And that is that, you know, if you aim low, you're going to hit something low. And I don't think that anybody should have been surprised that a woman that was, that was selling her, her most precious intimacy for money like that, you know, was just out looking for somebody to steal from, and was just out looking for a rich guy to marry, and probably take all of his shit too.